All right, in this demonstration, I want to show you how you can make a JavaScript menu that will behave as a collapsible type like this in your mobile menu. So here you see that we get all of our links and the way that we want them in the larger view, but then once you hit a responsive mode for mobile site, then you could go ahead and have a collapsible menu. And the links that I have here, don't worry about them, they're just from something else. It's older, it's just an example. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this, and let's take a peek here. This is where we left off last time, and we just have something that says page 1, page 2, 3, and 4, right? But we can't collapse it yet. So what we're going to do is come back over here to our code, and if we take a look at the way that our HTML is structured, oh, first of all, okay, before you continue, all right, the first thing I actually like for you to do is go into your file system and find your htdocs like I just did, and then what you want to do is take your files that you just created to do your template, and I want you to reproduce them. So on a Mac you could just right click and say duplicate. On a Windows you could just copy and paste it. And the thing that you want to do is rename it and do something like Project1-JS. If you want to do something like in phases, you could put, you know, the number 1 before project, number 2 before project, JS, whatever, however you want to do this. But what I'm going to suggest is that you duplicate your original files. That way, if you mess them up, you can always go back to where you started. Okay, so the other thing that I a lot of times will suggest is that I'll suggest that you go ahead and make a zipped version or a compressed version of your original, so you could compress your Project1, and it would basically turn it into an archive. And I am a strong believer in doing that, because then if you archive something in zip format, every time you want to adjust it, you have to double click it to open it, which is going to expand it and make a copy. And so that always will preserve your original. If you're sort of like me, and in the past, one of the things that I've done is I've accidentally worked on previous versions of things, and you know, was in tears later whenever things got really messed up. And I didn't have something to fall back on. So make sure that you're really good about keeping archival process versions. And sometimes you have to learn it the hard way early on. I've done that a couple of times in my career and on important things, and then I stopped doing that a long time ago. So anyway, make sure that you do that, and then whenever you start working, that you're working from your new Project1.js template, okay, and then go ahead and open that up, and this is where we are. And just if I wanted to double check and make sure that that's exactly what was happening, I'll go ahead and make sure that it says Project1.js. I'll double click it to open it, and I know that I'm using the right file. Okay, and then the next thing that you could do if you want, if you're using Dreamweaver or any other kind of IDE where you can create a project, you know, in the application, or in this case a managed site, you could go up to site and then say manage sites and create a brand new managed site in Dreamweaver so that it always grabs the files from the right places. Okay, so here's what we've got is this template, and what I want to do is I need to add this. If you take a look at this example, well, actually I closed the example, but there was a button that said menu on it, right? So what I want to do is I want to create that button here, and if you find where we did our global nav, in mine it's around line 24. What I want to do is actually want to put it inside of the global nav, but I don't want to put it inside this unordered list, right? So what I'll do is right above the unordered list, I'm going to type an anchor link. Okay, so we'll do href, and then inside of it, I don't want to browse for anything. What I want to do is put a hashtag. Now, I could, if I just left it as a hashtag, it would just, you know, basically refresh the page, and it acts as sort of like a trigger for the JavaScript that we're going to attach to it later. But for right now, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and type the word navigate after the hashtag. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because later on in the bottom of the page, I'm going to create an alternative navigational section so that in case somebody had JavaScript disabled on their computer, it wouldn't disable the, it wouldn't completely disable the menu. And I can talk about that some more later, but basically what it would do is that this would basically provide a way to jump down to the bottom of the page to go to an alternative menu. Okay, but for now, you just need to understand that the most important thing is just having that hashtag there so it can behave as a trigger and a link for JavaScript. So anyway, we're going to have it say href equals hashtag navigate, and then after that, I also need to give it an ID because the ID is going to be something that's important. And I'm going to call it menu, and the ID is menu, and the ID is going to be important also for being able to target the JavaScript as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and then inside of the anchor so that it's clickable on the screen, I'm going to type in all caps the word menu. Okay. Later, if you wanted to put like a little hamburger menu icon or something right there, you could, like as an image tag. That's fine, however you want to do it. Right now, let's just stick with menu. And the other thing too that I want to kind of come up here and do, just so you know, is that later, basically what's going to happen is that we're going to use this link right here so that that becomes clickable and it targets a change in this entire nav, okay, in terms of the way that it's going to address the open height and so on, the way it's going to change the styling. It's going to swap out a class up here on nav. And so what I also want to do is I want to go up here and type class equals, and then I'm going to just leave it blank. Basically what I want to do is I want to put something there that's a null class. And the reason that I put it there is that in some browsers, especially in some of the older browsers, if you use a certain type of JavaScript and the class doesn't already exist, and sometimes in some of the older browsers, sometimes it can do something a little bit unpredictable. It's not that big of a deal, but it's really easy if you put a class there, and if it doesn't exist, it won't load anything, right? So I'm going to type the word null. Now, I want you to know that the word null in this case isn't like a programming null. It's not like the way that null means null in PHP, for instance. It doesn't have some programmatic value here. I'm just creating a text string that's called null so that I know that it's meaningless, okay? And then basically what it's going to do is it's going to either append or replace, depending on how we write our thing. But what's important is I'm just going to have it there as a placeholder, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and just save this and see how it looks over here. I'm going to refresh, and then you see that I've got this button now menu over here. Now, let's just say that I want to have it centered like these other ones. And even if you chose not to center it, let's just say that this is probably going to make more sense in some ways. Centered here, you, again, like I said, might change your mind. You don't have to center it. You can deviate from this if you want. If you're using a little hamburger menu icon, that's fine, whatever, however you want to do it. But what I want to do is go into my styles, and real quickly, if you remember, what we're going to be trying to deal with is, see, this is called global nav, and then this anchor link is inside of that. So, and it has an ID of menu. So just keep that in mind as we come over here. And then what I want to do is find the place where I've got stuff that is specific to my navigation and go ahead and try to put it in there. The other thing that I wanted to show you is that, we're sort of putting like little sub notes in some of these, and now we're going to have enough stuff that deals specifically with just the navigation that I think right after or right before the navigation starts, I'm just going to put like a smaller comment here that is navigational rules. Okay. All right. And so that we know kind of where those begin. And right, what I want to do is I want something that's going to be inside of the global nav. So I don't want to just start typing it right there. I actually I like to put things sort of in the order that I linearly see them in the HTML. So that would be next after the main global nav rule. So I'm going to copy this up here, this descendant selector, and then I can work off of that, and then I can say a ID and is called menu. Okay, so that means that the anchor link with the ID of menu inside of the global nav tag, all right, is the one that we're targeting. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, as I said, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to do like a text align center. So, and then the next thing that I would like to do, let's just save that really quick and let's take a look here. Let's do a refresh. And what you'll notice if I show you over here, actually let's just double check, right? And what you'll notice is that it's still over here. And part of that is because, remember, an anchor link is an inline element natively. It's not display, so it's not trying to take up the whole block. It only takes up as much space as it takes up. So I'm telling the actual A itself to align the text in the center. Well, it is aligned in the center, it's just only taking up as much room as it needs. So if I come over here and I say display block, so that the whole line is clickable, then what I am going to end up with, if I come back here and hit refresh, is that it pops over to the center, and now that whole block, see, as I put my cursor over it, it becomes a clickable thing, okay? Now, if I click on it, one of the things you'll notice is if I clicked on it, I did click on it, and you see up here, it tried to go to navigate. Here, I'm going to delete that, and let's reload this page. And if I click on menu again, see, it shows me navigate. And that helps you understand that later, whenever we create a secondary menu at the bottom that is hidden, that only is there like whenever JavaScript is disabled, then it will jump down there, okay? So that's the reason for that. All right, and obviously in this view, it doesn't really matter. You know, we're not going to ultimately end up seeing this. We don't want to necessarily. But one of the things that you might notice is that this is maybe it's possibly a little thinner than this. See, if I hover this line is a little thinner, and we actually would like for them to kind of have equal distance. So let's go ahead and we're going to match the height. See, here's the height and the line height. I'm going to copy those from the list item, and I want to have those match here. So let's save that, do a refresh. You see it adjusts itself a little bit, and that looks a little bit more even. I'm not worried about the border because that's not going to be an issue right now that I'm concerned with. Okay. And then the other thing too, let's just take a look at how this is going to look. I wish that there was more of a visual break here, and maybe I want this to be set apart more than just having like this line underneath it. You know, it's this, again, this is kind of up to you. You could do like a glow or something around this. I don't know what your, you know, what your desire would be. There are tons of different ways that you could style this. You could have the menu have a background image. You could have it have a little icon next to it. You could, you know, have this left aligned. You could have it right aligned. You can use a linear gradient, change some other background color, have a different kind of line under here. That is up to you. You need to explore your different options. I will show you, you know, something if you wanted to be consistent with the way that these are. You could just come down here and take a look at the border bottom, and you could, let's see if this is the right color, and I think this is the same color, and so you could copy this and come back and paste it up here for that, and let's just take a look and see how that fares. And then we have some other kind of border here. If you wanted it to be more distinct so that it looked really different, you could change this color. Let's do over here a quick edit and maybe change the color of that. Let's try that again. Change the color of that thing. I don't know that I would want to change this to this color, but we could see what it looks like. Okay, that's a little bit too obnoxious. Okay, but the idea is, and then if we wanted, right, what we could do here is we can right click this, inspect it, and I'm going to dock it so that it goes down to the bottom. So we've got more real estate to look at this. And what you could do is, you know, make sure that you're looking at the styles, and you could click on this little color picker and in like a live view kind of play around with that color to see, you know, how it looks. And you might want it to be brighter than the other ones, but not as bright as it was just then. All right, so you could do something like, you know, like this. I don't know. It's up to you, really. You could kind of keep it so that it still has color, but just make it dimmer. I don't know. All right, so if that's the case, let's take a copy of this, and we'll come over here and we can paste it in, save it, do a refresh on it, and see how we feel about that. Okay, and that might be a little bit better. You know, it's up to you. As I said, you can make this a lot different. Okay, and then also, as I said, this doesn't even have to be the same color. You could make the background of this a little bit different. So if we were to do that, let's try that also. Say background, and then we're going to do the color picker, and you know, it might be one of these colors that it currently is, and so if you wanted it to be like a black even, or closer to a black, you could, so that it's even darker. So this is 0F, 0F, and so on. So let's try and see what that would look like. Save that, refresh. You know, that might be too dark, but it, you know, it gives you some idea that it starts to like have an offset. Let's do another quick edit, take a peek and see what happens if we make it a little bit lighter, but it's still darker. I think that's the actual color, so we can start there and kind of work our way down so it's a little bit darker, and that's a little lighter than the previous one. All right, so we might be okay with that. And then it is really set aside as something that is different, okay? All right, so the next thing that I want to point out here is, let's go back to the HTML. Now that we've kind of got this part set up, we're ready to start looking at how to deal with our JavaScript. But as a reiteration, I want to point out what's going to happen so that we have an understanding of how this whole thing is going to work. So right now we've got this entire section or tag called nav, and its ID is global nav, right? And what we did was we added this empty target class. Technically it's not empty because it has a string in it called null, but anyway, it's a target class that we've created as an empty shell so that we can target this. There's some different ways we could do this. We could hide the UL, which I don't really like to do because I don't like to hide things from the browser, because if you do that, it breaks accessibility so that screen readers can't actually even see it until they know that they have to click on something. Now, there's some different theories about using an anchor link as a button. In a lot of ways, a button, like the actual tag of button, is a better way of using it for accessibility. I will admit that. But one of the things that it has a harder time doing is if JavaScript is broken, like I would need to be able to use an anchor link that would jump to a place on the page, so that if JavaScript is disabled, then we can still get to the navigation. So there's some different theories that people have floating around about how these different things work. We could also give this an ARIA role of button, so that's an option too. So it'd be role equals button. Anyway, so I'm going to make it so that whenever I click this in the JavaScript, whenever it sees that the ID of menu is clicked, it's going to switch the class on it out so that it has a class that the CSS makes everything in here look different. In terms of what's going to happen, the nav, this whole nav section, is going to collapse its height. Right now, the height is automatic, so you see everything that's in it. But whenever we click on that button, we can limit its height so that it is only 2.25 em, so that basically it's only as tall as this menu button that we made, okay? And then whenever you click the button, it automatically will switch out the class so that it expands, and it can go back and forth, right? Okay, so that's the way that I kind of want to look at doing that. And in the next video, we're going to start by showing you how you can start loading the jQuery.